zoning for Tuesday, the 23rd of August, 2022. Mr. Peterson, could you lead us in prayer?
Lord, please bless this gathering, and bless all who have gathered here today. Give us your wisdom and patience to deal with the issues before us. Lord, keep your hands on us as we drive home in this weather. Pray that everyone gets home safely. And the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
All Johnson pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Joanne Lee, Shirley Anderson, Ashley Ferguson, Martin McDermott, brother, Ron McMorris, resign. Judy Odom,
Here.
Matthew Peterson. Sure. We have 4.
Has everybody had the opportunity to look over the agenda?
Agenda or last time's minutes?
Agenda.
Agenda. First thing, agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Has everybody had the opportunity to look over the minutes from our last meeting?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that brings us to our old business. We need to provide a recommendation for the Brad Bowser zoning change for the property on 961. Do we have a motion?
I've got it. Flies it back up to us again.
What happened the other night at the police jury meeting, the police jury would not even consider the zoning change without a recommendation from planning and zoning.
Said no.
I can't help normal. That's why we're back doing it.
So they want to make us the bad guys? I'm the same.
I addressed the advisor that asked me to speak on this to get the ball rolling, and I have the floor. My name is Jeff Moody, for those here who don't know me, I'm a surveyor. I think it is helpful for the public here and for the commission to kind of refresh our memory why we're even here to answer some of your questions. So bear with me, I'll give you a little bit of backstory and I'll talk to the specifics of what they were asking for, which was just a rezoning request to build 2 duplexes, 2 structures. But the backstory is, I first met with the Bowsers back on May 11th. And I believe they may have called me because I had originally surveyed their property, the property they bought on 961, 14 years ago in 2008. It's 34 acres or whatever it is. So we met back in May. They had some ideas. They just moved down here from Oregon. They had some ideas. They got 3 young sons about possibly cutting up some lots for the future for the son or family. But pressing what they were considering was wanting to build maybe a couple of duplexes or cabins or something up in the southeast part of their parish. So we had a discussion, and I told them, laid out the different ordinances in the parish and their options. And one of the things I told them, they could accomplish, they could build 4 cabins if they wanted to that didn't have to be rezoned. As y'all know, in the commission, if you have 100 foot of frontage and 125 foot of depth, you can have 1/4 acre lots. And you can build a cabin, a house, whatever you want to. That's your property, you do whatever you want. You can rent it out by the hour, by the week, by the month, whatever. The Bowsers had in mind even a better idea, instead of 4 cabins, to get 4 families in only 2 structures as opposed to 4 families in 4 structures. Well, to go that route, I told them they'd have to ask for or 2 zoning change to allow duplexes. And So their idea was 2 lots, 3/4 of an acre, with a duplex on each. It's still considered a single-family by your ordinance. And I'll remind the commission and the public, I don't know how the jury has gotten away with this for years, but be that as it may, most everybody's property here is zoned A2, rural. Rural is reformed, but it allows residential. Now, if you have whatever, 5 acres, 30 acres, 100 acres, and you divide a piece out, as soon as it goes under 3 acres, it automatically gets zoned R1. I don't know of anywhere in the country of the United States of America where anything is automatically rezoned without going through the zoning process. This parish it does. So, what that means is, in the Bowser's case, they've got 1,000 foot of road frontage on 961. If they wanted to, they could get 10 tracks across that frontage, 100 feet wide by 125 feet deep. That's 1/4 of an acre apiece. You can also, by your ordinance, put a servitude in there and get 4 more tracks off of a private servitude. So the only point of bringing that up is, by the current parish ordinance, they can have 14 residences out there on that piece of property because of the road frontage they have and the acreage. Doesn't require any zoning change, that's just what your ordinance allows. So, what I suggested to them before I spent any of their money or surveying it, what I suggested, because the pushing point that they wanted to see about, can we build 2 duplexes? I said, my suggestion is, ask for a rezoning change, see if you can get your rezoning change for your duplexes, then we can go back and see if they want to survey out anything else at this time before I go out there and do any surveying. So it was based on my recommendation that they came to y'all in June and they submitted their application, which let me point this out. A rezoning application is very specific. It's site specific, it's structure specific, and it's schematic specific. So even though you're asking for an R2 zoning, which allows duplexes, triplexes, patio houses, it lists what you can do. But when you fill out that application, you have to come in and say, this is precisely what we're building. And in this case, your application is saying we're building 2 duplexes. Your ordinances goes right down the list on what you have to provide. You have to provide a survey map of the property stamped by a surveyor, which they had that, my map from 2008. You have to have a very detailed site plan. You have to put on there the size of your structure, driveways, drainage. I mean, it's a host of things, a checklist in the parish ordinance of what you have to provide. So you're saying, this is precisely what I'm going to build. And then you have to have a map showing what part of your property you're trying to rezone. So they submitted all that, and with the application, and that was in June. Now, this is where, from y'all's standpoint, so they submitted it in June asking for this rezoning request. And in y'all's ordinance, once y'all get it, it's incumbent upon this body to review it to make sure that everything's in order. You have to see if the application is deemed complete. Once y'all review it and it's deemed that it's complete, checked off all the boxes, then you set the public hearing, which y'all did for July 26th, I think. You go out there and put the signs out there. I'm sure some of the public saw out there, hey, something's going on out here, so the public can be aware, so they can come in here like tonight and voice their concerns or whatnot. So that's what took place. I told them at that time, as far as going through the rezoning thing, I said, I normally don't fool with the zoning process. I can help guide you. It's pretty simple. It's, checklist, cookie cutter kind of thing. Y'all can handle that yourself if you want. So that's what they did. And the application, I looked at it, it was in order. And like I said, the site plan, it shows it's the best site plan I've seen in any zoning application. Very detailed, very professionally done. They were going to have 2 duplexes, 2 structures for 4 families, with 1 driveway going in there. As opposed to, without even coming through this zoning, they could have had 4 different houses for 4 families with 4 different driveways coming out. And R2 zoning, your minimum lot size for R2 zoning is 20 feet wide by 100 feet depth, 2,000 square feet. So they could have actually asked for the R2 zoning of 20 by 100 foot lot. He wanted to do it right, the others wanted to do it right. In this case, and the site plan shows it, the 2 little duplexes would be sitting off the road a good enough distance to have a green zone in there with 1 driveway coming out. So one of the questions, you might want to ask yourself, is that a better situation than having 4 quarter-acre lots with 4 structures with 4 driveways coming out? Because they can do that next time, because this is what the ordinance allows. So he was trying to go above and beyond the call to duty, plus it's on 3 quarter-acre lots. So I didn't go to the public hearing because like I said, they were going to handle it. But after that meeting that night, I watched it on YouTube, and a little bit surprised about some of the misinformation or the missteps on some of the comments. One of the comments was about the map showing what they were going to rezone. There was some discussion by the commission that map wasn't proper. Well, I will say this, that map that they submitted with the application, it was sufficient for the rezoning request, but had I known they were going to use that, and that's on me, I would have provided the map that we did resubmit that y'all have in front of y'all tonight, which I would have took off what we were showing, which was just a discussion map for them, showing the other 4 lots to a private servitude, but we had our 2 lots down here we want to be rezoned. That's what they submitted in the official application. So y'all had some discussion, well, the application is complete because the map, well, I'm just here to say it was still sufficient for y'all's cause, but I'm also just trying to point out in the future, that's kind of on y'all, because once that application is submitted, y'all have to review it per your ordinance, and by you issuing a public hearing and putting them signs out there, y'all are saying that application is complete. So I'm just bringing that to y'all's attention in the future. Now, I think there was some concern about the public hearing and whatnot. Like I say, it's very site-specific, structure-specific. In the ordinance, rezoning application must be for specific use. So just because you're asking for R2 and it allows of multiple things like any zoning classification, they're saying we want to build 2 duplexes, very specific. It also states by performance. Within 12 months of approval, the rezoning request by the police jury, the applicant must substantially complete the facilities proposed in the rezoning request, and by 18 months be totally complete and in use, or the property shall revert to its prior zoning classification. So what that means, if this goes on up and the police jury approves it, the clock is ticking. They got 12 months to substantially complete whatever those structures are that that rezoning was approved for, in this case 2 duplexes. So how this process works, the Bowsers come in here a month later, 2 months, 6 months later. They come in that office right there and pull permits. Say, we like to build 2 duplexes. Let's say there was some concern. Let's say you come here, I want to build 2 row houses, 3, whatever. Something other than what that application approved. She pulls it up. She sees the date it was approved, specifically what was approved, and say, well, I can't sell you a permit for triplexes or townhouses. I can only sell you a permit for what was approved by that application. So the whole system in ordinances has checks and balances in place. Nothing can slide by. It's specifically what was approved, in their case. Now, so y'all had the public hearing on July 26th. The public had their chance to make some comments. Y'all voted, kept voting in a deadlock 4-4. That means, if the public doesn't know, y'all on the Planning and Zoning Commission, y'all wear 2 hats. And I know I'm talking to y'all, but a lot of this is for the public behind me or whoever's watching the stream. The Planning and Zoning Commission wears 2 hats. The planning phase deals with just approving geometric layouts of subdivision lots, subdivision maps, which that's another issue the police jury doesn't get right. Y'all are supposed to have sole authority on subdivision maps. Be that as it may, they're the governing authority that gets paid, and y'all are appointed and volunteer. They say we want to see all maps up on them. I'm just here to tell you, I've been telling the jury this for 7 years. They're breaking state law by doing that. Y'all are supposed to have final say on planning maps. Be that as it may, it goes to them. But zoning's a different animal. When you put your zoning hat on, this is strictly a body that recommends to the governing authority, in this case the police jury. And like the other night, y'all voted a deadlock 4-4. There's nothing in state law says you got to go up there with a positive or negative. You had your vote, it was a deadlock. It goes straight back to the governing authority with no recommendation. We voted on it, we discussed it, it was 4-4 deadlock, no recommendation, it's in the police jury's hands. Now, we do not have a board of adjustments in this parish. Most places that have a zoning committee, there's a board of adjustments where people can bring their appeals once the governing authority if they turn it down. So like with anything, the final say actually is not even with the police jury. Everything is subject to judicial review. So if you don't like what the police jury says, you can take it up in the courts and see, did they just make an arbitrary and capricious decision? Was it biased? Did they just say, we're not going to approve it because a room full of people showed up? And they are supposed to listen to public input, but the criteria is that the courts listen to, first off, doesn't meet your parish ordinances. If you're in a zoning thing that you're asking to rechange the zoning, does it meet or fit the current land usage, or are you just doing something way outside of the current land usage? This is what the courts look at. And yes, they consider public opinion, but public opinion should never go up at the top of the list and trump, does it follow the ordinances and what have you. So again, when it went to the police jury, August 1st, and I went back, let me write this down, I went back and looked at it today. I was at that meeting, the August 1st meeting of the police jury, which they had y'all's recommendation. The recommendation was, we had no recommendation because it was a tie vote. It was not kosher for them to send it back to y'all. Y'all already had your public hearing. The public had a chance to voice their opinion. Y'all voted on it. It was a deadlock. It went up to them with a tie vote. We had no recommendation. They should have ruled on it. But what they said, what the chair said of the police jury, no action taken tonight is tabled. No action is going to be taken tonight. It's referred back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for the August 23rd meeting because it did not send their recommendation. Well, you did. So, I've seen this happen a lot. Y'all can say, we recommend to approve it. The jury is not bound by that. They can turn it down. Y'all can recommend not to approve it. The jury can say, we're going to approve it. So they don't have to follow your lead. They can do whatever they want. And hopefully it's based on looking at the ordinances and everything. So, that was on the August 1st police jury meeting. And I know a bunch of folks here in this room showed up for the next one on August 15th, whatever the previous police jury meeting. Should not have been on there. These people shouldn't have had to waste their time. It was already tabled back to y'all, which it should have been. But be that as it may, it was. And then on the next police jury meeting, it was on the agenda, not an action item, to discuss it. Well, there was nothing to discuss. I informed the Bowsers that night. It's on there. It's not an action item. I have no clue why it's back on here because they've already tabled it to come back to this body. Why, I don't know, but here we are. I said, obviously, y'all can do what you want. If it was me, I wouldn't show up for that meeting because there's nothing to discuss. We're going to have to hash it out again here tonight. So that's the backstory on all that. That's why we're back here. That's a long-winded explanation, Mr. McDermott, for why we're back here tonight. But I think it's important to bring this out because the police jury makes a lot of missteps. And I don't mean to sound like I'm preaching to y'all. Y'all deal with this, and I'm not trying to preach to the public. I'm a surveyor, not an advocate. I'm just trying to give out information on what I know these ordinances are. But I will say this, so to the specifics of this, that's what they're asking for. It's site specific, it's structure specific, it's got a timeline, it's got checks and balances. And as far as when you look at does it fit under land usage, the test is not because they're wanting to build duplexes, can I find another duplex in the area? Because if you go under 3 acres, it automatically gets zoned R1, that's still single family residential. A2 is still single family residential. R2 is still single family residential. The only difference between R1 and R2, R1 is for low population density, R2 goes up to medium and high population density. But ask yourself the question, our ordinance is lacking a lot of areas. There's no definition in our ordinance defining to me the difference between low population, medium population, and whatnot. But I'm just pointing out what they could do with their property specifically. They could have 14 residences on there. So you're adding 14, conceivably about 11 driveways, one of them would be a servitude. So you're really not adding, because we want to put 2 duplexes there with 4 families in one driveway coming out on 961, or 961, you're really not going from anything. You're not going from low density population to high density population for this. So I guess the last thing I'll say specific on that, you do have your checks and balances. What you're approving tonight is site specific. If they don't do it within that timeline, it reverts back to A2. There's nothing that can be slipped under the rug, no wool can be pulled over anybody's eyes. They wanna come back in here and do anything else on the next step like anybody else in this room, you gotta go through a procedure, you gotta get through this permit. And the enforcement area of any ordinance is always your permit office. That's what's gonna enforce anything. When you come in here to pull a permit, anywhere you're at, they're gonna pull up, well, when was this approved, how was it approved, what was it approved to build? Okay, check off all the boxes, now we can give you a permit. So there's your enforcement end on that. I think that's
I've got
it.
a lot of questions. I've got a lot of questions. And my first one is, I know that we're rewriting our ordinance in this area. So I think the engineers have been, I've been on this board now for 6 months, and we've been working on it at least that long. Are they any closer to rewrite the ordinances? My next question is, this keeps, and I've obviously gotten a couple of calls over this. And I realize that, once again, the notion that you can do whatever you want to with your land is true up to an extent. All right, but planning and zoning, that's where we get involved, and it is our job to decide whether or not something can be rezoned. And this motocross track keeps coming up. How are these properties, do they fit in any way into this moto track plan that they've got? And I ask that because,
The motocross situation cannot be on the discussion right now.
well, it's right here on the page. That was
It's from the-
submitted by who?
It's discussed in our last meeting, so it's not, what's up for zoning. Zoning is an R2 situation, moving just to the multifamily.
Right.
So the discussion about, there's no zoning in front of us, no discussion over motocross track. There has been rumor of motocross track, there's been, but officially nothing's been brought in front of
And,
us.
I mean, I bring that up because my neighbor built a motocross track for his kids across the street from me. I don't mind the noise because I know it's just his kids having fun. But if somebody built a motocross track across the street from me so that they could make money and disturb my peace so they could make money, I'd be a little pissed, you know?
Like I understand that, I agree with the chair, that what you have before you tonight is a simple question, 2 lots being zoned R2. There's a process for that, if anything happened to that in the future, and I'm just saying that for the public's sake, nothing can get slipped under the rug, and I don't know where that falls under, it's not even curtailing this discussion tonight.
I have a question. You said there's a checklist for asking for a rezoning,
That's good.
and who had to fill out the checklist?
Whoever the applicant is, in this case, the Bowser.
They had to fill it out, and they filled it out, and the checklist was accepted?
By y'all.
Yeah.
By virtue, and that's in the ordinance, and that's what I'll read y'all. Once y'all get an application for rezoning, it's on y'all to review it, make sure everything's been submitted, it's in order. Then once y'all say that's been ordered, you order you schedule the public hearing and you put the signs out there, so that was done. So it's not kosher to come back after the fact in y'all's public hearing and have a question, well, wait a minute, everything wasn't in order. If it wasn't, that's something y'all need to be very aware of in the future if it's not in order. And I'm just saying, that's why I'm being totally above board and honest. The map they submitted, had I known that was the one they were submitted, I would have cleaned that one up, because that was, I thought was gonna be for their eyes only. That's on me. So the map I submitted to y'all tonight, nothing changed other than I took off those other 4 lots. It just was for discussion that they may or may not do. Wait a minute, still has the chair.
Just hold on, because we're not gonna get into a long discussion of this. We're not gonna get into a real long, in-depth discussion.
And look, I'm not to interrupt you. I think that's all I needed to say, but the Bowsers are here, if you want to hear from
We have a
them.
representative from the Bowsers, so that's where this is gonna stand right this second. Because the public hearing for this was held at our last month's meeting. And that's where we do have to be aware, us sitting on this board today, is the true discussion of the matter does not go into the rumors of the track and that item. They are on changing to a multifamily in that area. So we just need to keep that in mind, because the discussion is there somebody that is representing the group that would like to speak? Ms. Rhonda?
I am unofficially, I think. Yes, we had a lot of things planned to say tonight, but I don't think that this committee is wanting to hear that. What I would like to do at this time is to let the committee know that we have over 80 signatures of people who are in that particular area who signed a petition against this, and we would like to put this into the minutes of this board meeting. That's all.
I'll sign it.
Is the sign-in sheet about who has the sign-in sheet?
Right here. I'm sorry, I wasn't aware there was something like that. Can you just sign it?
Yeah, yes. So we have one more signature, and as I said, these are people who are from the community, and I don't want to speak and to tell this committee all the wrong things that they're doing. I think Mr. Moody pointed that out in great detail. But if there is, what he spoke of, where there is an automatic change of the zoning, that is definitely
So
something.
there is an automatic change of zoning to R1 when you move the lot size down, when you move the property size down below the 3 acre couple of acres, whatever it is. So that is an automatic. R2, there is not an automatic R2. That is something that has to come in front of us. That's what he's discussing. It's basically just changing property size. It's going from agriculture, when you drop below 3 acres, it becomes residential. It no longer takes the privileges of agriculture.
The people who signed this petition are people who live in the area, people who have been happy and pleased with the shape of our community, the fact that it is agricultural in nature, and that it is not duplexes, apartments, condominiums, whatever. It's none of that, and it shouldn't be any of that. I mean, we have not had to come out in force like this in the past. This is the first time we've had someone come in from the outside to try to change our community. I also question whether or not this could have possibly been moot. The signs that advertised for this meeting, you address that?
About the move and stuff?
Yeah, the signs that said that Sitka Properties, or Sitka Project LLC, was requesting this rezoning. Sitka Properties does not own that property. And so for them to request a rezoning is tantamount to me requesting that I get to rezone your property. It's a legal entity. Sitka Properties LLC is licensed to do business in the state of Oregon. It is registered with the Oregon Secretary of State and has service of process in the state of Oregon, not Louisiana.
So the application was filed in Mr. Brad Bowser's name. He does have business name as Sitka Properties. I have no understanding of where, personally, of what the complications that would cause. Both names are on the application. Mr. Bowser did file it as his name, as the name of the applicant. So that.
But even if the name of the business is on there, the business does not own it, so they cannot seek to have it rezoned. Only the owner can. And so we're here for a meeting that was posted as Sitka Properties.
Sam?
I haven't seen the application. I don't know whose name's on the application.
So it's filed, I'm looking at it right here, it's filed, the applicant's name is Brad Bowser, and the business name falls under Sitka Properties.
Okay, so Brad Bowser is the owner, correct?
For Brad Bowser's on it.
Yeah, it should be sufficient.
that should be sufficient. That's
Even though
just
it's
some-
advertised as something else.
Well, everybody here knows what it's advertised for. Everybody here knows it's advertised to be changed to zoning. So I think we're all on the same page on that. You know, a technical difficulty, you know, that's pretty much something that should have been brought up a long time ago. You know, I mean, but if it's there, I haven't looked at it, I haven't reviewed it. If he used his name on the application and put a business name, if he's the owner, I would say that should be sufficient.
So I would just like to tell this committee that the people of Felixville are very much opposed to this. We do not want to start having duplexes and condominiums or anything else in our community. We want to keep it small the way it is.
I have a motion.
I'm gonna bring up something.
Yes, ma'am.
As Mr. Moody said, we're a dual purpose here. If this is, as I've said over and over, singly voting on zoning,
Yes.
that's what we need to confine this to.
And what we do have going on right now is we have a very valid point from Mr. Moody's side. We have a very valid point from Mr. Brown's side as far as not wanting to put, they don't exist in that area, not wanting to put them in that area. So we're standing on.
Okay, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion. In light of the fact that our engineers are still working on changing our zoning laws, and I realize that you've got to work under the laws and the ordinances as they are written at the time. This is a residential rural area, and Sitka Industries, or Sitka LLC, is a for-profit corporation that is coming here asking for a zoning change to a residential area for profit, which I'm not against profit, and I'm not against progress. All right, but well thought out profit and progress that does not bring detriment to the current residents of an area. I'm going to move to deny this zoning change.
I said,
We need to roll call on that.
Yep, I will do a roll call.
Secretary?
Roy Ann Lane,
no,
Mark McDermott. Yes. Debbie Oden,
yes.
Matthew Peterson,
Yes.
John Newsham, nay. Josh Oakman.
Yes.
4-2. So 4-2, it goes up with negative and negative recommendation.
Not the
And just let me know where these engineers are meeting and not rewriting our ordinances.
They haven't had one. Don't do that.
We'll talk about that later. We gotta hurry this guy.
Okay, let's start moving through. So, new business, all of the new maps have been advertised as required. That first brings us to a Wildcat Timberland map, just moving, can you represent that?
Is it okay for bother you?
No. Hold on one second. Anybody that wants to leave right now, y'all exit right now, please. please.
Okay, the reason I gave y'all that map, so y'all can look at what I outlined in pink, it's kind of confusing, this map. So what's outlined in pink is this 82.56 acre tract, it's Y1, A1, A1, A. So that's what we were subdividing. And so where you see the 9.20 acre tract and the 4.51 acre tract, there's 4 tracts there. The 4.90 and the 5.29, y'all see those 4 tracks on the map?
Yes.
Yeah.
These 4 right here. Okay.
Oh, there's one. Okay.
All right, so what we're doing, that's why it's kind of confusing, that's why I want to show you all that outline. So the 9.2 acre tract is going to be sold to Darren Tweedy, who owns that house, the 8.77 acre tract that fronts on Decent Road. So they've got a sale for that. The 4.51 acre tract is going to be a standalone tract. So that's why we have a 40-foot wide private servitude passage coming off of Decent Road to get access to those 2 tracts. And the other 2 tracts, the 5.29 and 4.90, the 2 people that already own those lots in front of them that front Parish Road, Mr. Darrell Rogers and Austin Brazil, they're going to buy those tracts directly behind what they already have. So those 2 pieces are going to be consolidated, but they're 2 tracts they already have. It's going to become one piece with their frontage on Parish Road. So, you know, we were cutting out basically 4 tracts from that 82.56, but then taking 2 of those tracts and combining them with 2 existing tracts, and the other 2 are getting access by private servitude off of these. So it's a combination of A6, exception 6, and and 3. A combination of 9 with a servitude and A3 exchange of property. So there's kind of 2 different things going on with this map. If y'all have any questions, I'll explain to you. I know it's a little bit kind of complicated. That's why I wanted to kind of delineate with the outline.
The servitude being pulled out of that 5 acre tract of Wild.
Correct, it's on the 5 acre, yeah, and then it goes into the newly created 9.2 to get to the 4.51 acre tract. And then the remaining tract, that 58.66 acre tract's got frontage on Neeson Road and 100 foot of frontage at Long Panhandle on Parish Road, so it's got 2 different access points for that remaining tract.
Is there anybody else to speak on this map? Public hearing. Can I get a recommendation?
Move to accept.
Mr. Secretary.
Roy Ann Lane,
Yes.
Mark McDermott.
Yes.
Debbie O.
Yes.
Matthew Peters. Josh Oakwin.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Thank you.
All right. That brings us to our second map. It's the Alan Johnson map. Is there anybody here to represent that map?
Just need the,
Did we full timeline?
I didn't see if anybody's opposed to
Let me interrupt, didn't we say that he's supposed to be here?
it. We have to do an ordinance change, and that's further down on the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Let's go.
So it's showing, this map is showing a division of a 70.71 acre tract into 4 lots. Has a servitude going down the back, private servitude, a little over 3,000 linear foot servitude. So, is there anybody here to speak against this? Close the public hearing. Approved.
I'm sorry, I'm reading while I'm talking.
Leon and Lee Dunn map. Is there anybody here to represent that map? Mr. Secretary, introduce yourself.
My name is Leroy,
Yes, sir.
I don't really have any questions here other than, this is a subdivided, particular more than acre.
Yes, sir.
And the property is owned by my brother and myself, which is Leon, it shows on the Leon and Leroy Dunn. I'm Leroy. Leon is undergoing some surgery, so he could not be here. And the surveyor suggested I come. I don't even know if it's necessary for me to be here.
It is recommended that you come and just give a brief description of what's going on, so. And simply, you divide the property
Yeah.
pretty much equally in that
Yes,
situation.
we own the tract, and we just divide. Leon, my brother, he keep getting older, and so, we.
That's fine.
You're not, I want to.
Gotcha on that.
And that's all we're asking for, truly, sir.
It should have been done 40 years ago.
Ooh, yes.
But that's the only thing we have here.
Is there anybody to speak against this matter? Close the
Now,
public hearing.
it's showing on the map, doing track 1 and doing track 2.
Yes, sir.
The names on there should be the same as Leroy doing track 1.
Well, it's done 1 and done 2, it's just the short name of the file.
It's just all the file.
Yeah. We know y'all about it.
Yes, sir. It's not listing actual ownership. All right, I'm gonna close the public hearing. Thank you.
Move to accept.
Mr. Secretary.
Roy Ann Lane,
Yes.
Martin McDermott.
Yes.
Debbie Oden.
Yes.
Matthew Peterson.
Yes.
Josh Overland.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
That brings us to the Alex Baker map. Is there anybody here to represent that map? Okay. So, this map is showing the removal of lot 3A, which appears to have a house trailer located on it. For Alex Baker on Nova. Is Alex Baker on the full property? He is the owner, he's the owner of full property. Is there anybody to speak against this matter? Close the public hearing. Get a recommendation from
Oh, who's this?
Mr. Secretary.
Roy Ann Lane,
Yes.
Martin McDermott.
Yes.
Debbie Oden.
Yes.
Matthew Peterson.
Yes.
Josh Overland.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
All right, that brings us to the Page Smith Bryant map. Is there anybody here to represent that map? All right. This map is showing the removal of Lot B from the remainder of the George Smith property on Old Plank Road South. That's being done from Page Smith Bryant. Is there anybody here against this map? Close the public hearing. All the top left corners.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Yeah, perfect.
Introduce yourself. Sorry. Brief description of what's going on.
We subdivided my mom's property, in 2 lots. We're selling the top lot and the bottom lot where the house is, and the second lot will actually be sold after that. So that it won't be anything built there.
Is there anybody here to speak against this matter? Close the public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Austin.
Appreciate it.
Can I get a recommendation from?
Second.
Mr. Secretary?
Roy Ann Lane. Martin McDermott.
Yes.
Debbie O.
Yes.
Matthew Peters.
Yes.
Josh Everett.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
That brings us to the James Moore map. Is there anybody here to represent that map?
Apparently I am.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Can you give us your name and brief description?
Okay, I'm Charles Moore, and, on the map, lot C, lot 1C, is proposed to sell to the owner of lot 2, Christopher Smith. James Moore, they own all of that. They're selling 4 acres to Christopher Smith.
Is there anybody here to speak against that matter? Close the public hearing. Thank you. Can I- Thank you.
Second.
Roy Ann Lane.
Yes.
Martin McDermott.
Yes.
Debbie O.
Yes.
Matthew Peters.
Yes.
Josh Everett.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
That brings us to the maps that are considered under administrative procedures and exceptions. That brings us to the Clover Stevenson map.
That's me.
Is there anybody here to speak to that map?
My name is Flora Stevenson. I'm in the process of building on the property, and I was told that I could not construct a house on a lot on the boundaries where the house would cross 2 boundaries. And if you look on the map, that dotted line that's in the middle is from the original map. So they were surveyed from west to east, and I lead them from north to south to separate lot number 1, lot C2B1 from lot C2C1, because the C2C1 is where I would like to build. To subdivide, so it wouldn't cross that line.
So in this case, we're basically just moving a lot line over, exchange property. Is there?
No.
It's a 26.
Roll call or all of it?
Oh, no, it's a roll call. That has a motion first.
Move to accept.
Second.
Roy Ann Lane.
Yes.
Martin McDermott.
Yes.
Debbie O.
Yes.
Matthew Peters.
Yes.
Josh Everett.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. Simple enough. All right. That brings us to our other business. We need to set a public hearing to discuss the change to the subdivision ordinance requiring the surveyor or a representative, responsible agent or owner to present each map for consideration.
Say right before the next meeting.
Wasn't there something else we were gonna add?
Ooh, I thought I put it on there, it's the owner's signature.
Yeah.
It's in the same, it'll be in the same paragraph that comes in, J, under the subdivision.
We were gonna
I'll
add.
have verbiage to have an actual ownership, right? So can I put a motion forward? Do we need a motion now?
We just need to set a public hearing, anybody can put it on.
Okay.
Can we have a public hearing right before the next
Yeah,
meeting?
that's what it was on.
Awesome, let's do that. So moved.
We'll do it at 5:45 before the next meeting.
Yeah, that's not very long.
about $40,000.
There's no discussion, no need on this. Second.
I will.
What day is this?
Next meeting will be September.
You got it?
There's usually calendar stuff.
27th.
When?
Second.
Thank you.
27th.
Yeah, it's the very end of the month.
27. 27, Ron?
Yes,
Yeah.
27, 9/27.
And to think you gave us all calendars when we came.
Well, I suppose the employer.
We have calendars, we have little folders that tell you everything. We come up here going, huh?
All in favor for that motion?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that brings us to, do we have any representatives from the police jury listed? Good. Legal advisor, Sam?
Yeah.
Public comment? Ma'am? Introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm so sorry, I don't know how to address you.
Okay.
Mr.
A lot of people talking a lot of different things the last time. So it's been fun.
Mr. Chairman, is that proper?
That's fine. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm okay, like dollar short. I apologize. I didn't know all this was going on with Felixville Road until I went to the jury meeting last week because they're building a shelter here in Eastville, and I wanted to hear those ladies talk. So I didn't know any of this was going on. I live on Oakwood Lane, which is off of this, which is off of Felixville or 961. And, I think, if I'm not mistaken, when I moved here 17 years ago in September, one of the things that I was looking for was how areas were zoned. I was looking specifically, I never planned to move to Eastville. I love it here. I love our community, and my home is here. I'm retired, and I built a house. And one of the zoning issues for me is that I didn't want to have a track. And I have some neighbors that do four-wheeler tracks, and I'm like you for children. And children grow up, they don't even do it anymore. So and they were there, and people here are so nice and considerate. They never did it at midnight or 6 o'clock in the morning. They were very, and I try to do the same thing. I go out and run the lawn till 5 o'clock in the morning. So, I'm very concerned that someone can just move in and change zoning. And maybe this isn't the correct body to talk to, but that's one of the reasons I chose to live here, because of the zoning. I wanted a rural area. I don't want to live in Baton Rouge. I grew up there. That's why I'm here. I don't want this to turn into Baton Rouge. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I'm zoned, I have 5 acres, and it cannot be split. If I understand the zoning, I don't know, I'm not gonna do that. But, you know, and I think all of our neighbors are wonderful. I don't think anybody tries to do anything. And people can do what they want with their own land. And also, tell me if I'm incorrect, I don't know who this, Mr. Moody, do you live here?
Yes,
You do live here?
for 40 years.
Okay, because we're not, behind you or the public. These are our homes and we live here. And that's it. Okay.
That's
Yeah, that's
We
it.
don't need to.
We've already got that.
Thank you.
Just don't need
Thank you.
to. Thank you.
Thank you so
I
much.
appreciate it. Thank you. Any other line? Yes, sir.
Y'all, Steve, you talk about the subdivision ordinance, and I know you can't do it tonight. Y'all need to, I would suggest y'all do the same thing with the zoning. There's no requirement that like tonight, there is no requirement in the ordinance that the owner shows up to state his case for rezoning. So just as important it is for the subdivision ordinance, you might want to, at your next meeting, do the same thing for zoning, because I heard the president of the jury misspeak to the public when they were saying, well, the people didn't show up, there was discussion, folks supposed to send a letter, if you missed 3 meetings, I mean, all kind of just wrong stuff coming out of that chairman's presence. So, to clean that up, you might want to do the same thing with zoning, and require that the owner show up so they can speak, or representative of the zoning.
Can we
No,
amend
it's gotta be in the system. We'll do it again. We'll do it again next time. All right. Okay, is anybody else, public comment?
to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Look, I do have one comment.
You missed it.
It's about the wrecked car on Plank Road in DB's parking lot.
Oh.
I said, well,
That's this meeting. That's.